I was having a conversation with a brother yesterday just about how vision is a wonderful thing. Progress is a wonderful thing. Movement is a wonderful thing. What did I write down? I want to make sure I say this right. Productivity is a wonderful thing. And we're just talking about how God often gives us vision for our life and what essentially like the macro of what he wants to do with us specifically. And I think at times we can get lost within the vision God has given us because we take what he's shown us in whatever way he's shown it to us, and then we run with it the opposite direction. We run with it somewhere that God did not actually ask us to go. And what I would like to propose this morning, and this is kind of like the focus of whatever is going to be said this morning, the central idea and the main point is this: I'm praying, I am desiring that we as the people of God would not prioritize progress or productivity above the presence of God. We are called to be people that prioritize his presence above all things, including anything that you deem productive, anything that you deem progress. And I think within just our culture, we have wrongly, defined progress as forward movement. I'll say it again. We have wrongly defined progress in life as forward movement. If you were to ask the Israelites at the Red Sea what progress looked like in hindsight, that they would be looking at their situation and going, we don't feel like we're making any progress toward the promised land or toward what God has told us we're going to have. Because God told us to go around the land of the Philistines because we weren't ready and it would have scared us. So he brought us around, and then we found ourselves at this location. Then he told us to go backwards so that we were cornered against the back of the Red Sea. And they would say, yeah, looking back in hindsight, at that moment, that didn't feel like progress. That looked like backward movement. That looked like God was actually bringing us backwards. And it didn't feel like we were making any kind of movement. They didn't feel productive at all. It felt like God was cornering us. It felt like God was actually having us do something that seemed contrary to what real progress is. But if you let them talk a little longer, the Israelites might say, but what God did through that was indeed productive. What God did through that was real progress. And sometimes what we need to understand is that the only way we can truly make real movement and progress that God deems helpful and God actually qualifies as true progress, the only way we can actually experience that is by prioritizing the presence of God above everything else. And if you're not periodically getting in the presence of God in prayer and fellowship, and even having periodical times of just fasting and setting aside everything to seek his face, and if you're not having a rhythm of getting in his word and meditating on the scriptures, if you don't have that ingrained within your life, that rhythm of God's presence, that daily seeking of his face, then you will begin to look at what God is doing in your life that seems backwards, that seems like you're actually taking 10 steps back away from what he told you you're going to go to, and you'll qualify that wrongly because you're not seeing with his vision. And I think the only way to truly biblically and accurately evaluate what God is doing in our life and frame that up properly is to have a healthy rhythm of fellowship with God, to have relationship with God. So if you go to Exodus, I think it's like Exodus 12, could be wrong. Okay, it's like Exodus 13. In Exodus chapter 13, and again, this is not going to be a verse-by-verse study. This is just what God brought to mind for me. As we talk about prioritizing the presence of God in our life, we get so sucked into this unhealthy cultural habit of being addicted to progress and productivity, where it's like, I need to be doing something. I need to be seeing movement in my life. I need to see my finances increasing. I need to see myself making movement towards the job I've dreamed of since I was 12. I need to see movement in my relationships and actually finding myself getting close to being married to the husband I've always wanted. We are addicted to progress and productivity, that when God calls us to be silent, to sit and be still, to wait on him, to actually seek his face, oftentimes we will forfeit that in the name of going after what God has given us vision for. And we'll say, God, you showed me this is going to happen. You told me to do this. You asked me to be doing all these things. And what we do is we sacrifice, we actually forfeit what God deems most valuable in our life, which is his presence. What is most valuable to us is the presence of God. Now, in Exodus chapter 13 or 13, when Pharaoh let the people go, God didn't lead them by the way of the Philistines, even though that was near. Sometimes in life we want the shortcut way. We want the fast way. We want the, help me to bypass all the difficulty, all the obstacle, all the tension, all the unnecessary hardship. God, help me to bypass that and go straight for what you have for me. And what we see with the Israelites of the Exodus story is not a God who always takes the fast road and brings you around all the difficulty and hardship. What would have been fast for the Israelites would be to go through the land of the Philistines. Could God have sustained them? Sure. Could God have defended them? Sure. Could God have been a shield for them and protected them from all the enemies? Sure. Did he do that? No. He brought them around the land of the Philistines because God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. There would have been something in the Israelites based on their upbringing, based on the centuries of being in Egyptian culture and being surrounded and immersed in that. There would have been something within the Israelite nation that would have said, hey, the Philistines are like a warring people. They're mighty warriors. Let's go back to Egypt. And God knew what would have happened. Sometimes we just boil down the knowledge of God, the foreknowledge of God, to God knows what is going to happen. But the beauty of the God that we serve is that he also knows everything that could and would happen should you have made a different decision. So what we have here in Exodus chapter 13 are the Israelites. God is taking them around what would have caused an issue for them, but would have been faster, right? In their minds, this would have been the faster route. Verse 18 says, God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. And the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt, equipped for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph, just like Joseph told the people, when you guys leave, take my bones with you, like you do on a Saturday morning. God will surely visit you and carry my bones with you. And they moved on from Succoth to the edge of the wilderness, and the Lord went with them by a pillar of day, cloud by day and pillar of fire by night. Okay, so they're on the edge of the wilderness. They're on the edge of the wilderness. And then God tells Moses this. When they think they're getting close to the promised land, when they think they're getting out of the Egyptians' line of sight, when they think they're finally escaping Egypt and they're finally safe, God tells Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back. And actually go and camp in front of Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-zephon. And I want you to encamp there and face the sea. Pharaoh's going to say, hey, the people of Israel, they're trapped. And what God says is, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart once and for all and get victory and glory over Pharaoh. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the Egyptian, servants are like, Pharaoh, what the heck have you done, bro? Let's go get them. And Pharaoh goes, you know what? Yeah, let's go get them. And what we see is that Pharaoh drew near to the people, and he sees that they're stuck in the wilderness and up against the Red Sea, and he goes, their God has cornered them. And then the people of Israel freak out, and God, why have you brought us here? Moses, you're going to be our punching bag. Come here. Why did you bring us here to die? We could have been in Egypt. Are there no graves there for us to die? And it would have been better for us to die there. And so what we have are the people of Israel looking at what God is doing in their midst and going, this is not the story you said God was writing. And Moses is probably going, you got me. I didn't know we'd be doing this. God told me last minute to go up against the Red Sea and be cornered with our backs against the wall so he could get glory over Pharaoh. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but guys, shut up. God's going to do something. And God goes, Moses, raise your staff. And then the sea splits and they walk through, and it's wonderful. But that's an example of what it looks like for things to seem backwards, yet God is moving us forward. If you were to, in life, sometimes what we experience, we go, this is I'm back here again. I'm dealing with this again. I thought God moved me out of this. I thought God moved me on from this. I thought we were past this and God moved me into a new season. Why are we back here? And what God does in your heart through what you deem as backwards movement is actually progress. And if we can learn to just go, God, your presence is enough for me in the midst of everything that goes on. Your presence with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The fact that you're with me, your rod, your staff, it comforts me to know that even if we're in the valley of the shadow of death, your presence is before me. If we can learn to say, that's enough for me, then we won't be so frustrated. We won't be so discouraged. We won't be so even ashamed and humiliated at times by the lack of movement and progress we see in our lives. Because we'll learn to say, if God is with me, that's enough. And if what I'm going through doesn't seem to be forward movement, if what I'm going through seems to be the opposite of progress, I trust that his presence in the midst of that overrides what I seem to be looking at. There's something else going on underneath the surface that God is doing. And so, just a word for all of us to say, prioritize the presence of God above all else. Do not allow your obsession with productivity and people's perception of your life to influence how you, respond to the presence of God in your life. We're too fast-paced. I'll say it like that. We're too fast-paced. We live in a culture that's obsessed with the next. What does God have next for me? What is God going to do next in me? What does God have next for our financial situation? He just provided, but I'm already thinking about the next opportunity to receive a miraculous, financial provision from God. So we get obsessed with the next, and we are forfeiting and overlooking the present, which is the now that leads us to the next. And I'm telling you, God gives us proper vision of our life. Sometimes we're too quick to evaluate something and jump the gun and assume that how we've evaluated that is correct. When in fact, no, we don't always evaluate things properly. We need to look at Proverbs chapter 3 and go, look, I trust the Lord with all my heart, with all my soul, and so I'm going to let him establish my steps in all my ways. I'm going to acknowledge him, and he's going to direct my paths. And part of that means, God, the way I'm looking at my life right now might not be correct. What I'm concluding, what I'm evaluating based on my life might not be correct. So, Father, would you give me your perspective? And I think when you actually evaluate life through the lens of, from the perspective of God, and you let him give you proper vision of your life, you'll be okay with whatever pace he's moving you at. And sometimes we get so stressed and anxious because we seem to be moving slower than we'd like to be moving. Whether that's in relationships or conquering addiction or seeing financial breakthrough or moving on to the next season or getting direction in our life. And God, am I supposed to take this job? There's 3 fantastic options and they're each equally going to honor you and they each pay equal. God, which one do you want me to take as we're seeking direction or whatever? Sometimes it's easy to go, I'm moving too slow, so I'm going to speed things up simply because we haven't gotten God's vision for what we're actually going through. And God is supposed to set the pace for our lives. Point blank period. If you begin to set the pace of your life, if you begin to take control and get behind the wheel as if you're the one in the driver's seat, things go south very quickly. Things begin going south very fast. And you go, God, what the heck? And he's going, I had nothing to do with that. That was you. You got very obsessed with what other people are doing and with what I'm doing in other people's lives. And then you compared your life with theirs and you said, well, I should be moving that quick and God should be doing that in me. And so you pushed your foot down a little too fast on the gas pedal and didn't trust that you were moving at my pace. And I'm trusting that God knows how to show each of us the pace we're supposed to be moving at. There is a pace of grace. There's an ideal pace that might seem slower than what you would ideally be going at, what you would want to be going at. But I promise there's something about the miraculous and God setting up everything in the background as you move slowly so that when you get there, things happen like out of nowhere, the miraculous. It's the suddenlies of God. And those suddenlies in our life where it's like suddenly financial provision came out of nowhere, even though I had no job for 6 months because I kept seeking the face of God. And out of nowhere that happened because you were moving at the pace of God and he was moving everything in the background to where it was supposed to be, setting everything up, positioning everything so that by the time you got there, it seemed like it was suddenly happening. But just like Israel gets to the Red Sea, they're like, or the Promised Land, they're like, look at this. We just get to clear house. We get homes and vineyards and orchards and fields and everything, cities entirely built for us. And God's going, yes, because you guys waited up to this point. You waited the 400 years in slavery for the sins of the Amorites to fill to the full. And now everything is positioned. You're ready. They're ready. The sins are going to be dealt with through you guys going in. And bam, it seems like suddenly. But God's been working behind the scenes for years. Through what you thought wasn't working. And I promise, if God told you to do it, it's working the way he wants it to. If God told Elijah, tell them there's going to be a famine, and for 3.5 years, Elijah has to be jumping from place to place, and he's fed by ravens, and then he goes to the brook, and then that dries up, and God moves him by withholding provision, and then he finds himself being, I think it's with a woman, either way, it's a woman that's considered pagan, and she has a son, and she's pretty much going, we're just here to die. And Elijah goes, would you give me some bread and water? And she goes, I don't have a lot. And then God multiplies. That's how God provides for Elijah. If we can look at that story and say that God knows how to not just provide for us where we are, but to direct us through what he doesn't provide, then we can really just be still and trust that he's the good shepherd. And that's what I would love for you guys to grasp this morning, is that if he's with you in what you're doing, it works far better than you jumping the gun and running full speed into what God has given you vision for. Vision is not a bad thing, but seeing what God does not want you to see, and seeing your life for what it's not, and seeing beyond the steps God has told you to take now, that's when it becomes a little wonky donkey, and God goes, I gave you the general vision of your life so you had general direction to move forward and move towards. I didn't tell you, and this is what happens is we, become like the people of Israel, where Moses is taking a little too long on Mount Sinai, and they're going, it's been 40 days, so he's probably dead, and they assume, rather than consulting God, they demand Aaron actually go out and build them a golden calf, and we don't want to wait for Moses. Can you make us gods that led us out of Egypt? And Aaron goes, sure. Give me the gold that God gave you guys as you are being redeemed and brought out of Egypt. Give me that gold that you're supposed to dedicate for the tabernacle. Give me that gold that I'll fashion into a golden calf. And they get very impatient waiting for Moses. And the thing is, they were waiting on people. I think that's the frustrating thing about that story, is that their hopes slowly shifted off of God, if they were ever on God at all, and they started to shift onto Moses. And in their minds, the people of Israel saw Moses as the embodiment of the divine. You're the face of God. You're the messenger of God. You're the hand of God for us. So we're going to look to you as our God. And that's exactly why God doesn't tell them where Moses' body is buried, because they would have done some weird stuff with that. Just like they did with Gideon's fleece or the bronze serpent. Those end up becoming idols for them, because what God uses for a season, we often hold on to longer than God wanted us to, and then we twist and contort that into something God never wanted it to be, and we begin bowing down at the altar of God's provision for a season rather than looking to God throughout our lives. And I love that there's just a call on the people of God to be very careful and watchful. Be vigilant. Our hearts, I've heard, can become idol factories. We can pump out idols like no one's business. And without even thinking about it, we can begin to idolize social media, progress, money, financial provision, the person at work who can really help me ascend the ladder and get to the place where I can provide for my family and even be a blessing to people. And God, I'm going to bless people who don't have a lot, and I'm going to be a source of provision. But you're looking to people to give you what God said he would give you if you just walked at his pace. And so if you begin to look to people in an unhealthy way, and trust in people and let them replace God in your hearts, you'll find yourself inevitably forfeiting what God has for you because you compromise and end up doing what he told you not to do. So this is what it means to actually have vision for your life, is you let God set the pace for you. You let God give you the appropriate amount of vision so that his word is a lamp unto our feet. And sometimes the word of God will light just the next step for you. The question becomes, is that enough? Is that enough for you? Because if you need more steps to be lit up for you to be faithful with what God told you to do now, then I don't think it's an issue with God. I think it's an issue with our own hearts and our own lack of reverence for him. And the fact that we truly don't fear him. We won't obey him. And if obedience is conditioned upon the information you have, if God says, hey, I want you to fill in the blank, and you're like, well, I'll do that once you bring everything else, put everything else into their proper position, and you do this and this, then I'll obey, then your obedience is no longer obedience. When you do that, it's conditioned upon God doing things that, frankly, he didn't need to do for you. And this is, I don't know where to go from here. There's so many thoughts that I have. I'm just reading your guys' comments. And I'm trusting that through what I'm seeing you guys talk about, God is going to direct the next topic of conversation. But yeah, I was back to the story of me talking with my brother, not my physical brother, but brother in Christ yesterday. It was just really helpful because I'm not going to share a lot, but I'll say this. My wife and I are navigating the next season of our life, and it takes a lot of, okay, that's a good place to go. What God has called us to do, we feel very unequipped to do. There's a lot of fear and hesitancy and insecurity in me because of past disappointments I've had trying to do what he's telling us to do now. And the story that comes to mind for me is when Jesus is, I think it's in John's Gospel, towards the end of John's Gospel, the men have been fishing all night. This is after they're already disappointed. Jesus is gone. He's showed up a couple times, I think, post-resurrection to the disciples. They're out fishing all night. They catch nothing, and Jesus goes, hey, try again on the right side. And essentially, Jesus tells them to do what is backwards to all fishing wisdom, and they're like, well, okay. And he ends up bringing them in a huge catch of fish. And it's even in Mark's Gospel in the beginning of Jesus' ministry. So it's like the beginning and the end of Jesus' ministry. He's doing something very similar with the disciples, instilling hope and encouragement and life and promise into them by going, yep, if you just do what I say, things won't always be like this abundant kind of overflowing miracle, but my presence will be in the midst of what you're doing. And so what that story demonstrates for me is just that sometimes what we try and do over and over on our own, in our own strength, even when we think God is asking me to do this and it looks like it fails and we're disappointed and we're very insecure now and there's wounds now and I don't want to try that again because I might fail and people thought I was really stupid for trying it those 3 times and now God's telling me to do it a 4th and I don't think I have the motivation to do it again. I don't have the heart to even put myself out there and try again. This story reminds me of that. That if God says to do it, do it. And the results are in his hand. This is what John 15 says. Apart from me, you can do nothing. John 15, verse 6 or 7. 5. Jesus says, apart from me, you can do nothing. Right there. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you just live like that, then you really do trust that the results are in his hand and you're not worried. If he says do it, do it. And so we're navigating this whole, should we do it? Because essentially we've been fishing all night. I've tried this before. Didn't work out well. Tried it again. Didn't work out well. Tried it again. Failed. Banged my head against the wall over and over, wondering, did God really tell me to do this? What's up, Angel? Good to see you, brother. Good to see you here on the YouTubes. And so I just want to encourage those who are really wrestling with God telling you to do something and you're like, is it me or is it God or is it his spirit or is it just pizza I had last night or how do I know it's God? if you, like Gideon, want to put a fleece out there and go, well, God, if you make the ground dry and the fleece wet, I'll know you're with me. Okay, well, this time make the ground wet and the fleece dry, or vice versa. If you want to do that, sure, go ahead. If you want to be like Jonathan, where he's like, I want to go fight the Philistines, I'm bored. God can destroy them through us. I know that. And you know what? Let's go. Jonathan decides to take his armor bearer. They go to the stronghold of the Philistines. And Jonathan's like, if they respond like this, God's with us. If they respond like this, God's not with us, right? So God ends up being with them. And I think about if you are really sensing the Lord is asking you to do something, and it takes a lot of faith, and you've tried before, and there's a lot of hurt behind it. There's a wound there from all the disappointment and past failure. All I'm saying is if he says to cast your net on the right side of the boat, even though you've been fishing all night, just do it. Just do it. And again, if you want to be like Gideon and go, well, God, if you're with me, sure. If you want to be like Jonathan, well, if they say this, then we'll know God's with us, sure. But some of you know what God has told you to do. You know very clearly whether it's committing to a 40-day Bible study plan, or whether it's taking the next 7 days to fast, and you've never done a fast, and you're scared, how will that affect my blood sugar levels, and I am diabetic, and you're wondering, like, how do I navigate this? Get wisdom, ask people how they would do it. All I'm saying is sometimes God will tell you to do something that is very general. It's this grandiose picture of what you're supposed to do, but he's not necessarily telling you to do that in its fullness. He's just giving you a goal to go after so that you can begin taking steps towards that. So, for instance, if it's planting a church, start talking to pastors. If it's taking 7 days off from social media, begin letting people know you're going to be off. If it's taking time away from whatever shows you usually watch and scrolling mindlessly at night, then begin unplugging the TVs and start taping the outlet to the wall so that you're not tempted to plug it back in and then go, remember, God said to take a break. Or just think about what you can be doing now to begin moving towards what God has given you vision for. Nehemiah the cupbearer had a vision in his heart to see the walls rebuilt in Jerusalem. And he experienced a lot of adversity, a lot of hardship, a lot of opposition. And that didn't actually stop him from doing the task that God set before him. There was a task at hand, and it was in his heart. And what's interesting about Nehemiah is he hears the bad news of Jerusalem's condition. And he doesn't just jump the gun and go for it. He actually goes to the king, and as he's serving as cupbearer before King Artaxerxes, or whatever his name is, he says a little prayer in his heart and goes, God, would you please, just let this man give me favor or whatever. And then boom, he takes one step forward, and the king honors that decision. And he goes, what's wrong, buddy? And he ends up, backing Nehemiah to go and do the work in Jerusalem. And Nehemiah's like, what the heck? I can't believe this is happening. And it's step by step. And sometimes we don't trust that what we believe for is actually from God. Because again, there's trauma, there's hurt, there's wounds that God is dealing with as you move forward and learn that even though what you tried in the past failed, maybe it didn't fail from your vantage point or from God's vantage point. Maybe it was a success in accomplishing what it was supposed to do. Or maybe God never told you to do that. And that's one thing I want to touch on. I know I'm all over the place, but this is just me shooting from the hip. If you want to say prophetically speaking, fine. But one thing that I struggle with personally is, what was I going to say? Not just discerning whether or not God is with me in what I'm doing, but knowing whether or not what I tried was of God or not. You know what I mean? Like, I thought God said to give $500. Now I'm struggling with my bills for the next 4 weeks. Or I thought God said to, and then what results from your faithfulness and your step of faith looks quite contrary to what you imagined it would look like. And I'm saying when you look at John 15 and Jesus goes, apart from me, you can do nothing. He's not just talking about, apart from me, you can't even be alive and you can't literally do a thing because I make you exist. But also it's the results of your labor. Like Paul says, one waters, another will plant seeds. But one waters and another sows the seed. But God brings the growth. Or one harvest, God brings the growth. That's the point. Is that through all of our labor, through all of our efforts, through all of our steps of obedience and steps of faith, however much we put ourselves out there and rely on God and just jump in faith that he's going to catch us because he said to jump. When we do these things that God says to do, the results are in his hand. And I think we get discouraged because we imagined things would look differently. But God told you to jump. He didn't tell you what it would look like when you did. God told you to sell your car and actually give to that person in your church. He didn't tell you what it would look like when you did. God told you to begin planting a church and trust that God is with you. He didn't tell you what the process would look like and what adversity would be along the way. And so we get in our own heads because I thought God told me. He did. You just painted a scenario and assumed that it would work out a certain way. And God's going, I actually never said it would work out like that. I said, I planted in your heart the desire to build the walls in Jerusalem, Nehemiah. And you didn't know that. And this is, like Angel writes in the chat, faith is not presumptive. I don't write the script and then ask God to co-sign it. And go, can you sign right here on the dotted line? Because I've already scripted out my life in faith, and then you're going to do it. That's not faith. Faith is not presumption. Faith is not assumption. Faith is not me writing the script for my life. Faith is, God, I have a sense that you want to do something, that you're leading me to do this, and it didn't originate in me, it came from you. So I'm going to step out in faith and trust you with the results. And it's enough that you're with me in the midst of it. I don't need it to work out a certain way. When your obedience, again, depends on things working out a certain way, when you need your act of faithfulness to result in a certain way, then it's no longer true biblical obedience. That's conditional. In Scripture, what I see are people doing what God says, not mindlessly, but because they have history with God. And even before they have history with God, when God calls Abraham to leave the land of his fathers and Ur of the Chaldeans, or leave, at that time he's in Haran, after his father Terah died. When all that takes place, Abram just steps out and he goes. And God doesn't say, here's where we're going, here's a map, I'm with you to tell you to turn left or right. He goes, here's a general promise. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to make a nation out of you. I'm going to multiply your descendants. I'm going to give you promised land. Now move forward. And Abraham had a general direction to move. God didn't give him a step-by-step playbook where God was like, every step of the way, turn left, buddy. Do not take another step. Slowly turn around. You're going to see a Philistine. I want you to high-five him. Don't say a thing. He knows what to do. You're going to reach in your pocket. There's going to be 100. That's not how it happened. God said, move forward. Here's a general promise. And Abraham, by faith, not on his own, but with the leading of God, and in faith that God would honor it, Abraham had to make decisions along the way based on what he knew about God. And some of you you're assuming that when God leads my life, he makes all the decisions for me. And that's not true. Proverbs actually makes it clear that wisdom is employing what God has taught you, that the Spirit of God brings things to mind, John 14-16. And the Spirit of God helps you navigate. You're not on your own. You're not pulling from your own human wisdom. You're not functioning with worldly wisdom. You're trusting that the wisdom God has given me, he's entrusted to me to utilize to make decisions here. And I'm not waiting for a yes or no from God. Sometimes he says, walk forward. And you're like, but what's the right answer? What's the right step forward? And God goes, move forward. But what does that look like, God? He's gone, you have history with me. You know my word. You know my promises. You know what it looks like right here at this crossroads. You know exactly what it looks like. Employ the wisdom I've given you. Oh, but God, I want to step out. I don't want to presume. Presuming is I don't care what God says. I'm going to do what I want and slap his name on it. Faith is going based on what I know in Scripture and based on the general trajectory of my life. Here's the next step to take, and I'm going to cover that in prayer as I walk. And if you're not covering each step in prayer, then of course you might slowly begin to wander into presumption and assumption and some pretty sketchy territory that God wanted to spare you from. But at the same time, even so, God knows how to work within that. So my encouragement is trust in I'll say it like this, every step you take, every decision you make as best as you can. Spirit of God, what is the wisest, bring Scripture to mind for me. God, help me to make the right decision. I promise, when you cover your general steps in prayer and your general plans in prayer and your decisions, and you actually truly mean your will be done, watch God go to work. Watch him move. The problem is, this is not about trusting self. Forget self. This is a lack of trust in God. And you go, what do you mean? Well, if I'm waiting for God to tell me yes or no before I can move, then I'm not really trusting that he's capable of navigating my feet with the wisdom he's given me. It's not me leading my life and then going, God, I want you to approve of what I'm doing. Faith is, God, I really, based on what I know of you, this seems to be the best decision, but your will be done. I'm going to move forward, and if you want to shut it, shut it. If you want to keep it open, keep it open. But I'm going to begin making preparation in faith and taking steps towards what you've shown me. And if you want to shut it down at any moment, go ahead. Faith is being okay with God actually shutting down what you assumed he would do and how you thought it would look. Faith is being okay with God totally changing up the script at any given moment. And saying, you know what, Abraham, I'm glad you got the promise now. Now lay your son down on the altar. And you go, but I've been waiting literally a century. I'm not exaggerating, God. I'm 100 years old. And I've waited this long. Faith is going, yes. And I don't know what that looks like, but you told me to go to this mount, so I'm going to saddle up. God didn't tell Abraham what preparations to make. He said, offer your son as a sacrifice. So Abraham, God doesn't give him a step-by-step playbook. Okay, laying my son down. What would that require? Wood? Fire? A knife? My son? I'm going to bring a couple guys with me to watch my back and protect me and guard my stuff while I go up the mountain. So he makes preparation for the steps of obedience he's going to take. And I want you to, if you need to write that down, please do. Sometimes we need to make preparation for the steps of obedience God has asked us to take. And God's going, sell the house. And you're going, but where am I going? He's going, do it. And so you begin making preparation for that act of faith. And along the way, you're covering every decision in faith. Should I even get her involved? Should I consult? Should I actually let them be a part of the process? Should I even think about this moving company? As much as you can, you cover every decision in prayer. It doesn't mean I wait for a yes or no from heaven to move forward, but I employ the general understanding of God I have in Scripture. I let the Word of God and the Spirit of God as best as I can guide my decisions, and I trust that the results are in his hand. We are too afraid to fail. And at times, what we qualify as failure is no failure at all. Technically, as children of God, and I want to be careful, I have to tread lightly here, but technically, along the road of our sanctification, along the path God has paved for us, even if we wander off and do things that are contrary to what all of our life as believers, as children of God, God is sovereignly over that and working all of those details into his plan for not just us, but his plan to make all things new. So this is the beautiful thing. It's not sin because he accounted for it. It's even when I experience what I perceive to be failure, I can get up because there's a way that God is going to use what I didn't anticipate. And he's going to use it not just for my good, but for the good of others. And again, this is not a God's sovereign, so sin because he's accounted for it. This is a, why would I want to wander at all away from the best, most abundant life he has for me? But even when I do, there's a sense in which the sovereignty of God, as his child, his sovereignty overrides even what I perceive to be failure. And he actually knows how to turn what looked like failure into something that produces some kind of good. And we're so afraid to make mistakes and step out because what if I don't? Or what if I can't? Or what if he doesn't? Or what if the things don't? And I'm saying if he said to do it. That's all I'm saying is when you know he said to do it. And it's clear in Scripture. And there's more comfort and peace and assurance than you can ever have around that decision when you know he said to do it. You do not need to know how it's going to work out. I promise you. You do not need to. And I say every, hyperbolically, not literally, but all the biblical characters you read about in the Scriptures had just enough data to move forward, but not enough data to have the entire picture of their life laid out before them, lest they become self-dependent and not rely on God anymore. And I think that's what you need for those of you that are truly afraid of failing because you've tried it before. You've tried the business, you've tried whatever it is that God is calling you to do in your old age even, and you're going, really? Me? I'm in my 70s. And God's going, yes, you. Do you know how old Moses was when I called him out? A different situation. I get that. But can God use anyone in any season to do whatever he wants? He can. God is not limited to the vessel or the experience of the vessel or the gifting of the vessel or the ability of the vessel or the knowledge of the vessel or the age of the vessel. God is not restricted or limited to any of that. What we do, though, is we look at what God has told us to do, and we place our own human restrictions because of fear of failure. And we actually give ourselves a safety net. You know when you're about to tell a joke and just in case it doesn't land right after you go, stupid joke, right? To you didn't give anyone a chance to respond. You told them what to think about your joke before. You know what I mean? We do that with God. A lot of the times. We're in case this doesn't work out. And God's like, whoa, if I told you to do it, it's going to work out the way I want if you just step out in faith. And your fear of failure can easily become one of the biggest obstacles to actually walking with and enjoying the fullest life God has for you. It's not about what you and I can do, I promise you that. It is not what you and I can do. It's about what God can do through any vessel he chooses. He can turn these stones into sons of Abraham if he wants. He can make children of Abraham out of these stones. He can make this donkey correct a prophet that should know better, but he's going anyway when God said not to. Talking about Balaam. God can use the smallest of means to do the most miraculous of things. And yet, fear of failure still stops us. Well, I've tried this 9 times and I'm 45 now. Why would I do it again? You do it again because God said to cast your nets on the right side of the boat. That's why. And at his word, you do it. But if it doesn't, it's not about how it's going to work out. Not at all. It's about what he's told you to do. And if that is supposed to bring about a sense of, hey, that didn't work out the way I wanted. Good, God worked through that, and he taught you to not lean on the results, to trust in him in the midst of it. Whatever happens, whatever works out, whether it doesn't at all, God is with you. And this is the whole point of this. God's presence is priority. It has to be. God's presence is primary. If anything begins to take your eyes off the presence of God, and this is what happens when you see God, if you're looking at my camera right now, I don't know the technical terminology for camera stuff, but I'm what's in focus on the camera. In the background, what's fuzzy, right, but clear enough for you to tell what it is is like my wall, my shirt, my posters, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Judge me if you want. All this stuff is in the background. It's not the focus, but it is in the background. It's for you to see. Sometimes what we do is we put our life circumstances and our vision at the forefront. That's the focus. And we begin to bow down at the idol of vision and what God has shown me I need to do. And God takes a back seat and he's just the fuzzy background. God fits into the picture, but he's just a part of the vision he's shown me, rather than the vision he's given me being a part of the way he's going to work through my life to bless the world and play my role in the body. So nothing about our life is the main focus of God's story. What is the focus is his son, and we still get to be in the backdrop. We still get to be a part of what he's doing. But if you let anything take the front seat of your life instead of God, other than God, inevitably you will begin to either pervert and taint what you're calling as quiet time with God, or you'll have no quiet time at all because I don't have time to spend with him. I'm too busy doing what he's given me vision for. And so there is a balance between do what he says, but what he always says to do is to seek first his kingdom and his presence above all else. And if you begin to prioritize information and knowledge and biblical data and archaeology and apologetics and the vision of planting a church or starting a ministry or having a TikTok or whatever, if that begins to take the focus and the front seat of your life, and that's all you see, then you'll begin to just use God as a means to get what he's shown you that he's going to give you. Instead of going, I'm going to keep you first. God is first in my life. And if keeping him first means that I accomplish his vision for my life slower than I'd like, then so be it. But I'm not going to sacrifice intimacy with God in the name of accelerating his vision for my life, in the name of getting there faster. Because even if you get there faster, without God's presence, like Moses tells God, I don't want to go to the promised land without you. Like, I refuse. If you don't go with us, I don't want to go. And that has to be the mantra of your life. If you're not with me, I'm not going. I don't care if it's the most perfect scenario and everything is in place, except God is not with you. Like, if God's not with you, screw it. I don't want anything to do with it. And yet, so often, I'll take an opportunity, like King David in the caves with King Saul taking a dump like you do on a Saturday. He's just chilling, and David's like, oh my gosh, I could kill Saul right now. And I am the anointed king. I have been for years. Instead of taking his opportunity to ascend the throne and going, look at the opportunity God has given me to ascend the throne. David said, look at this opportunity God has given me to honor his name and to honor the king. And even though he just cuts the corner of the robe, which I understand there's definitely a deeper message behind that, even when he does cut just the corner of Saul's robe, his conscience is pricked. And he goes, oh, that was wrong. He could have accelerated the process right there. I can be the king right now. And he said no. Twice. He could have done it. He's walking around. He grabs King Saul's asleep in the forest, and Joab's watching King Saul. And then King David sneaks up, takes the javelin of Joab, and goes, hey, Joab, you're doing a great job being Saul's bodyguard. Joab wakes up to grab his spear, and David goes, looking for this? 2 times David could have accelerated the process. And I'm just saying, if you have an opportunity to accelerate things, do you even consult God before taking that opportunity? Or is it like you automatically label it as an opportunity from God and you run for it? Let's not move presumptuously. Let's not move on assumptions. Let's not just ask God to co-sign and approve of what we've already scripted out for our life. Let's trust that at his pace, in his way, whoever's involved, I will move towards what he's shown me for my life, but I will not sacrifice at all my intimacy and fellowship with him. And God will never lead you to do something that will otherwise compromise your friendship with him. If you think that God would do that, you don't know him as well as you think. And I say that lovingly, because sometimes we learn something new, and all of a sudden, like, you're the theologian of the century. Yeah, I'm talking to myself. Oh, look what I discovered. I bet no one's ever seen this. And suddenly that arrogance, that sense of pride, leaks into how I make decisions. Well, if I figured out something that probably no one's ever seen, then God's totally with me. That's the most arrogant thing you could ever think. Decision making is hard because of the fact that there's this tension between I wait on God, but I also have a responsibility to do what he's told me to do. So even if it's like God gives you a vision, a general vision for your life, and I know people don't like that word, but that's just the word I'm using, so get over it. If God shows you, here's the general trajectory of your life as whatever role you're playing in the body, and then he tells you nothing else, and you're like, so what do I do now? You and I, we know at least what we should be doing in every season, every day, and every moment of our lives, which is to seek first his kingdom, which is to prioritize his presence above all else, which is to make sure that he stays first. And if those things aren't intact, if you're not seeking first his kingdom, if it's all about your kingdom, your empire, your name, your platform, your reputation, your renown, you being the speaker, you being known, you being liked, your books being signed, then I'd venture to say that either you are not doing what God told you to do, or you're going after a version of what he had for you, but it's been tainted by your own human ambition, and it's no longer the purest sense of what God has for you. And I'm just saying we need to constantly reevaluate where we're at and be introspective and honestly, truthfully, like day by day, hour by hour. I don't know why my Logos Bible software is doing this, but hour by hour, be consulting God in what we're doing. Yesterday, I thought we were going to do a Q&A today. And then as I was just enjoying the presence of God and praying and seeking his face, I just sensed, I didn't have heaven opened. I didn't have the angel Gabriel show up and be like, sup, bro? I got a message for you. What was it? None of that, just sense tomorrow is going to be different, and don't plan anything. It's not going to be a Q&A. The problem is we get into such a rhythm that works that we settle into the rhythm God created that we're not even open to him breaking out of that, breaking us out of that. When Elijah was fed by ravens, when Elijah was watered, hydrated by the river or whatever brook, the brook of Kidron, I think is what it was. I could be wrong. But either way, God was supplying what Elijah needed for a season. If Elijah settled into that and assumed, this is how God's going to take care of me the rest of my life, he would have been very frustrated, discouraged. And I can't assume he did or didn't, think this, but if he did assume that this is how God's going to take care of me, and then God dries up the brook and stops sending ravens one day, and Elijah's like, what the heck? Where are you, Lord? He would have been real frustrated. He would have been really, really discouraged and probably blamed God. But he was open to God changing the script and moving him into a different season and providing through a different way. I don't assume that God's going to continue providing for me and my family through this online platform. I don't assume that. I don't assume I'm going to be on YouTube forever. For this season of my life, I'm on here. For this season of my life, I'm serving and teaching and creating resources. He could say, stop that right now, shut it down, throw it away. And I would have to. I would have to. Like, not because it's against my will, but I want to be like Jesus, who walks into a room and says, I only do what I see the Father doing. I want to be that. I want that to be true of me. I don't want that to be the perception of me. I don't want that to be my reputation, but in private, I'm a massive jerk. I want to truly be, as best as I can, moment by moment, someone who can honestly say, and God can say, he does what he only sees me doing. I want to be that. And so if he says shut this down at any moment and trust that he'll provide another way, and and do something that I'm like, you're bringing me backwards in life, God? Like, you're making me work a 9 to 5 at a grocery store? I'd have to do it. And I'm saying that now to you guys, but I would really have to deal with feeling pretty pissed off that he brought me this far only to bring me backwards. I'd have to deal with that and work through that. And by God addressing that within me, that is progress. Even though it would seem backwards, and I'll tell you, I have nightmares about going back and working at Best Buy at a 9 to 5 and being around all that radiation and having to eat garbage snacks and dealing with angry people. That is literally a repeating nightmare for me. I'm not joking. Going back to that kind of an atmosphere. Not at all to knock on that. Just for me, my experience in that was not fantastic. But if he tells me to go back and he's like, go stand in the same spot I brought you out of 10 years ago, 12 years ago, go back there. What else can I do? If I'm here without the favor of God, if I'm here without his Spirit moving and directing me to do this, if his hand of approval is not on this, I don't want anything to do with it. And that has to be the mantra of our life. If you're not with me in this, if your hand is not on this, I don't just want God's favor. I don't just want his approval. I don't just want his yes. Some of you guys do. Like, you just want him to say yes, you can do it. Oh, thanks, God. And my kids do that. They don't care about what I want for them. They just want to know if they can coerce me into a yes, right? And so then we treat prayer like it's just how do I manipulate and make my words what they need to be to move God to do what I want. That's what my kids do for me. Hey, I know we had 3 popsicles already and 8 chocolate bars and it's 7 a.m. Can we also have a donut? And I'm like, they know that's the dumbest thing they could ask from me. They know that. There's no like, we had no idea. They know. And so when they ask me, they're not concerned with what I want. They're not concerned with my heart for them and what I perceive to be good for them. They just are coming to me going, what can we do to make daddy say yes? A blasphemy almost, to make daddy say yes. And that's what we do with God. What can we do to make God say yes? God, I've been feeding the homeless 3 weeks in a row. I've been serving in kids ministry. I even risked getting sick and bringing that home to my kids. So are you going to move us into a bigger house? You know what I mean? And that's what we do. Unfortunately, that is what we do. I just need God to say yes. And I'm wondering, when you pray, is it coercion? Is it manipulation? Is it twisting God's arm as if you can do these things? Is it making God approve of the plans you've already made? Or is it truly going, your will be done, not mine? What do you want from me? What do you want from me? And that's a good place to end. That's where we're going to end. I'll see you guys Monday, Lord willing, to continue our series on John. Was this a one-time thing? Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. Will this be every Wednesday? I have to ask God if that's the case. But I'm going to daily say, what is the fresh movement we're going to make today, Lord? What are the fresh set of plans? I can't rely on yesterday's stale revelation and yesterday's direction as if you haven't changed course at all. God, you might be changing some things up for me. What do you want? All right. I'll see you guys Monday. That's all I got for you. Keep moving towards Jesus and come join us in the Discord. Yeah, it'll be fun. Bye. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to share your thoughts and your insights in the comments. If you want to share your thoughts and questions about these studies, join us every Thursday evening at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a live discussion together. And thank you for supporting this ministry. Your support helps us accomplish our mission, which is to teach people how to read the Bible so they can live and teach it for themselves. We're only able to make all of these free resources because of generous supporters like you. So thank you very much for all of your support. Make sure to visit AboveReproachMinistry.com to check out all of our free resources. And as always, keep moving towards Jesus.